sir, Finn corrected quickly. I need to ask you to turn around and leave. He kept his voice steady, trying to ignore the unexpected tremor in his own. The woman in front of him exuded an authority that he instinctively recognized, the kind that came from years of experience, from having seen more than one sunrise. He was a young guard in his first posting, and she was something else entirely. Whoever she wasn't giving him the time of day. He needed to assert his authority. I'm sorry, I can't allow you to proceed. May I ask who you are? He asked, keeping his tone professional. You have a visitor, she said. A visitor? Finn frowned. He knew no one at the fort, at least no one who would send a woman dressed like her to pick him up. I don't think. Who sent you? She interrupted, her tone leaving no room for evasion. A shiver ran down Finn's spine. This was uncharted territory for him, a world away from the ordered predictability of his lists. For a moment he hesitated. Could he refuse to let her in? Would that show defiance, disrespect? He was barely 21. It's Private First Class Finn O'Connell, he said, reciting his name like a mantra. And I don't know anyone who would be visiting me here. You're sure you won't mind if I check? She said, her lips curving into a slight smile. Finn hated that smile. It implied a challenge, a test. She was sizing him up, he could feel it. And in that moment, he knew that his usual strategies wouldn't work. His meticulous planning, his obsessive attention to detail, it all felt childishly inadequate against the quiet confidence that seemed to emanate from her very pores. His most reliable asset, his list, meant nothing here. What was he supposed to do? Surrender, comply, run away? All he knew was that he couldn't just let her in without clearance, not when the lives of so many people depended on his vigilance. Ma'am, I'll repeat myself, he began, but she cut him off. Let me make this easier for you, son, she said softly, reaching into her pocket. Then she brought her hand out slowly, revealing two badges that glinted in the morning light. One was silver, the other gold. He recognized the seals and insignia instantly. Special Agent Rebecca Lansing of the Counter, Intelligence and Security Directorate, and a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with two of the most powerful entities in the US military backing her. What was he supposed to say? That he wanted to see her list? The weight of their presence pressing down on him, Finn gulped. Ma'am, I apologize. I don't know why I was told to expect a visitor today, especially not someone of your rank. Indeed, Lansing replied, her tone betraying none of the thoughts racing behind her eyes. She nodded curtly to the sergeant, who came and stood beside her. Sergeant, Lansing said, would you run a quick background check on Private O'Connell? I want to make sure there are no discrepancies in his file. Discrepancies, Lansing repeated, her gaze fixed on Finn. He looks solid, got a little spunk in him too. Reminds me of a young lance corporal I once knew. She paused, her eyes seeming to bore right through him. But there could be things in his file that we're unaware of. Things that might explain why the brass wants him here. Lansing turned back to Finn, her expression unreadable. You got anything to hide, son? Any reason you don't want me looking through your records? Finn shook his head vigorously. No, ma'am, nothing, I swear. Good. She turned away, a faint smile gracing her lips again. Then I'll take my chances on you. She stepped past him, her movements fluid and confident, and entered the checkpoint without waiting for it to be raised. The sergeant followed, casting a curious glance back at Finn, who remained rooted to his post. His mind was a jumble of questions and confusion. Why had Lansing come to see him? What did she want? Why did it matter? And what was it about him that made him special enough to be monitored by the Joint Chiefs? As he watched her disappear into the guardhouse, he felt a sudden surge of anger, a protective instinct rising within him. Who was she to waltz into his checkpoint like that? He was a guard, a protector of this installation. He didn't report to her. She should have asked permission to enter. Hell, she should have cleared it with him first. Suddenly, he snapped back to attention, his anger replaced by a jolt of realization. Had he just disobeyed an order? Lansing had deliberately provoked him, testing his mettle, gauging his reaction, and he had passed. She knew his training, his background, his mentality. How did she know more about him than he knew himself? He straightened his uniform, checked his weapon one last time, and marched into the guardhouse. His list had failed him, but he wasn't finished. He was just getting started. Inside the guardhouse, the air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and paper. Lansing and the sergeant sat at opposite ends of a long counter, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Finn stood awkwardly between them, acutely aware of the power dynamic that had shifted so abruptly. So, Lansing finally broke the silence, her eyes twinkling with amusement. What do you think you're doing here, son? I don't know, he admitted, his gaze dropping slightly. Like I said, I don't know why I was told to expect a visitor, especially not someone of your rank. Fair enough, Lansing replied, leaning back in her chair. But you handled yourself well at the checkpoint. Your instincts were sharp and your tone was firm. You have the makings of a good guard, maybe even better. Thank you, ma'am, Finn managed, surprised by the compliment. I try to do my best, Lansing nodded approvingly. That I can see. But sometimes, she added, leaning forward, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, sometimes being a good guard means asking questions. It means not taking orders blindly. Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. "What are you saying, ma'am?" Finn asked cautiously, feeling a chill crawl up his spine. "I'm saying," Lansing replied, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "There are things happening in the world that you don't know about, things that people would prefer stayed hidden. And sometimes those things come right to this very post, to this little corner of the world that you're guarding." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You think you're protecting this installation, Private O'Connell, but you don't know the half of it." Before Finn could respond, the sergeant slammed a file onto the counter, his face grave. "Lansing, we got something." She sat up straighter, her eyes flashing with renewed purpose. "What is it, Thompson?" "O'Connell's file has been tampered with," the sergeant said grimly. "Someone's been digging through it. I can feel it." Lansing turned to Finn, her gaze intense. "Do you know anyone?" she began, only to stop abruptly as the sergeant held up a hand. "Don't bother denying it," he said to Finn, his voice hard. "We already know you've been compromised. There's a mole in your unit." "A mole," Lansing echoed, rising from her seat. "Looks like our little visitor isn't the only one with secrets." Her eyes, hard and cold, fixed on Finn. "We need to get you out of here. Someone's watching you, O'Connell. You're in danger." Lansing wasted no time in formulating a plan. She needed to extract Finn from the fort immediately. But doing so without tipping off whoever was monitoring him would be tricky. She had to think fast. She needed a distraction, something big enough to draw attention away from the checkpoint. "Sergeant," Lansing said, her voice sharp, "I need you to call the Provost Marshal General and tell him we have a code red situation at the main gate. We need immediate assistance." The sergeant nodded curtly, his eyes flickering to Finn, who was staring at them both with wide, apprehensive eyes. "Stay here," Lansing instructed, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Just stay here and keep your head down until help arrives." With that, she hurried out of the guardhouse, moving with the long strides and confident gait that had become a familiar sight at high-level meetings and military summits. She needed to get to the PX, the post exchange, the heart of activity on the base. From there, she could guide Finn out unnoticed, using the crowds and the noise to shield them. It was a risky move, but she had little choice. Every second counted. Sergeant Miller walked back into the guardhouse, leaving Finn frozen by the door. He could hear the low rumble of the sergeant's voice. It was rare that the base was visited by people from higher command, and even rarer for them to come unannounced. He hoped they wouldn't take it the wrong way. After all, he had been taught that disobedience meant court-martial. Yet here he was, possibly disobeying a direct order. He glanced back at the woman. She stood patiently by the gate, a ghost against the backdrop of the setting sun. Her silence was a challenge, her patience a test. What should he do? Should he call in the alarm? But why? There was nothing on his list for this scenario. What if this was a drill? No, that didn't make sense either. The atmosphere was too tense, her demeanor too confident. Plus, no one would send a single soldier to guard the gate during a drill. That would be insane. His eyes darted between the open gate and the closed door to the guardhouse. He needed help, advice, direction. But who? He considered calling the duty officer, but the thought of explaining this strange situation over the phone made him cringe. And besides, he knew the duty officer would tell him to follow protocol, to follow the book, but there was no entry in the book for this. His eyes fell on the radio in his hand, forgotten, neglected, silent. Maybe he should call his superior. But what would he say? "Sir, a woman is trying to enter the base and she says the general is expecting me." That sounded ridiculous even in his head. And then there were the soldiers. They were armed, capable, trained to follow orders without question. But what orders? His mind reeled, searching for a solution, for a way out of this predicament. Time seemed to stand still, each second stretching into an eternity. The quiet hum of the radio was his only company, a constant reminder of his inaction. Suddenly, he heard the sound that broke the tension, the quiet click of a lighter being struck. He turned to see the woman holding a cigarette. Her fingers were long and slender, her movements graceful and fluid. She inhaled deeply, her eyes fixed on the horizon. He couldn't help but stare. She exuded confidence, a quiet self-assuredness that was both intriguing and intimidating. Before he knew it, she was speaking, her voice soft, yet clear. "You look troubled, Private. Do you want some advice?" He blinked, startled by her sudden question. He hadn't realized he'd been so open in his contemplation. He stammered, caught off guard by her perceptiveness. "It's nothing, ma'am. I just need to confirm your identity." Her lips curved into a knowing smile. "So that's the answer you've been looking for, Private. My identity. Is it really that important?" He stared at her, surprised by the unexpected turn in their conversation. He had been so focused on protocol, so rigid in his adherence to rules that he had unconsidered that she might be the one to offer a solution. Her words echoed in his mind. Was confirming her identity the real issue? Was that what was troubling him? Or was it something more, something deeper? Something about her presence, her demeanor, her challenge. He felt a surge of emotion, a mix of frustration and admiration, of challenge and intrigue. For the first time since she arrived, he saw her not just as a civilian at the gate, but as a person with thoughts, feelings, a story. In that moment, he decided to break the rules. Not all rules, just enough to listen, to talk, to engage. He owed her that much. He wanted to know who she was, why she was there, what she wanted, and most importantly, he wanted to understand the situation he found himself in. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the base, he took a step towards her, leaving the safety of the guardhouse behind. He was stepping into the unknown, guided only by curiosity and a sense of adventure. He wasn't sure where this would lead him, but he knew that following the rules wouldn't get him there. She turned to him, her eyes shining in the fading light. "That's quite a decision, Private. Are you sure you won't regret it?" He met her gaze, his own resolve hardening. "No, ma'am. I'm not sure I would forgive myself if I did." He stopped a few steps away from her, unsure of what to do next. She remained silent, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. The silence stretched, becoming a barrier between them. Then, as if sensing his discomfort, she turned, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Shall we go for a walk, Private? I believe we have much to discuss." With that, she started walking, her gait firm, her shoulders squared. He hesitated for a moment, torn between his duty and his curiosity. But the lure of the unknown was too strong to resist. He fell into step beside her, matching her pace. Ma'am, I need to ask you to identify yourself." Her laughter was like music to his ears. "Oh, Private, you are such a rule follower. How endearing." She paused, turning to him with a playful smile. "Very well, Private. My name is Evelyn Reed. It's nice to meet you." They continued walking, side by side, the rhythmic crunch of gravel under their boots filling the silence. He looked at her, truly looked at her for the first time, noticing the determined set of her jaw, the strength in her stride, the intelligence in her eyes. "Evelyn Reed," he repeated, savoring the name. "It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am," he added quickly, realizing that she was not any ordinary civilian. He could feel it in his gut, a premonition, a sixth sense, something telling him that she was someone important, someone to be reckoned with. They had been walking for a while, perhaps 10 minutes, when she stopped abruptly, turning to face him. "It seems we've come to a bit of a crossroads. Private, which path do you think we should take?" One path was wide and well-maintained, leading directly to the main entrance of the base. The other was narrow and overgrown, barely visible. He frowned, confused by her question. Ma'am, I don't know which path is correct. We should probably check with someone in authority." She gave him a sharp look, her eyes boring into him. "Are you suggesting I don't know my way?" "No, ma'am, of course not." He realized how that could be perceived as a lack of trust and quickly tried to rectify it. "I mean, I'm sure you know which path to take, ma'am. I just thought we should verify." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Touchy. "I appreciate your concern, Private, but this is my journey. I must navigate it alone." She gestured to the overgrown path. "This is the way I want to go." With that, she disappeared into the undergrowth, leaving him in the dust. He stood there for a moment, watching her go, feeling a mix of emotions. Surprise, intrigue, a hint of fear. What had he gotten himself into? But as quickly as those feelings arose, they were replaced by determination. He wasn't going to let some civilian walk all over him. He was a soldier, damn it. And soldiers followed orders, even if those orders were given by civilians. He set off after her, pushing aside the foliage that hid the path. He had to find her, to bring her back to the main gate, to remind her that this was a secure installation. He was a soldier on a mission, and he wouldn't rest until it was complete. "He's not entertaining me, Sergeant," she said, her voice gaining an edge of steel. "He's briefing me. You see, he's leaving and I'm taking his place." Finn's blood ran cold. The words hit him like a physical blow. The new commander, taking General Peterson's place, that was a position of immense power, of immense responsibility. No one, not even the president, would just walk up to a military gate in a civilian raincoat and expect entry. This was a test, a ridiculous, nonsensical test. He was sure of it. But Sergeant Miller's face remained impassive, his eyes boring into hers. "I don't care what your clearance is, ma'am, or who you are. General Peterson is not expecting anyone. He's gone off-site. I'm sorry, but I have to ask you to leave." She tilted her head back, staring at the ceiling of the Humvee, as if studying the stars through the glass. "You have no idea who I am, do you, Sergeant? You should know better than to keep a superior officer waiting." The weight of those words settled over Finn like a shroud. He felt the heat of 1,000 eyes upon him. Was she really a superior officer? Did she outrank General Peterson? What was her clearance level? How could she just waltz onto a restricted military base without proper identification? Questions hammered in his mind, but he couldn't afford to waver. Not now, not ever. He was trained to follow orders, trained to identify threats and neutralize them, trained to protect the sanctity of the base. But this woman was an enigma, a puzzle that didn't fit in any box, a threat that he couldn't quantify. "I repeat, ma'am, I can't let you in, and if you won't leave, I'll have to detain you." She finally turned back to him, her expression inscrutable behind the glass. Very well, Sergeant. If you want to play games, then so be it. Make it quick. My patience is wearing thin. Before Finn could respond, she pressed a button on her radio, her voice sharp and commanding. Alpha 1, this is Kestrel. I need immediate extraction. Repeat, Kestrel requires immediate extraction. Over. The call sign Kestrel sent a jolt of recognition through him. It was an old designation, rarely used anymore. A ghost from his past in special operations. Who's Kestrel? He asked, his voice betraying his surprise. My question is not for you, she replied, her eyes narrowing. Answer me, Sergeant. The sergeant hesitated for a moment, torn between his orders and his duty to report a breach. Finally, he chose the latter. There's another vehicle approaching, ma'am. It's the General's car. Her lips curled into a humorless smile. Excellent timing. Just in time to meet our new commander. Meet? What are you saying? What authority do you have here? More than you seem to realize, Sergeant. Much more. A chill ran down Finn's spine as he watched the familiar black sedan approach. With it came the unmistakable presence of General Peterson, the commanding officer of the base. This was his territory, his domain, and yet this woman, this mysterious Kestrel, had waltzed right in and taken charge. General, she said, her voice ringing with authority. I presume you're here to relieve me of my duties. How thoughtful of you to join us. Peterson's expression was a mask of thunder, his eyes flashing with anger. But before he could speak, she continued. Don't bother, General. I know why you're here, to escort me off base. That's quite enough, ma'am. I don't know who you are, but you're a long way from home. Right now, he said, his voice like ice. I'm gonna need you to come with me. Oh, I think I'm quite at home, General. In fact, I'm here on official business. She paused, her eyes twinkling with amusement. Business that, I might add, concerns you directly. General Peterson's grip tightened on the car door. You've caused enough trouble for one day. Come with me now and we'll sort this out. And what if I refuse, General? She asked softly, her gaze unwavering. Then I'll have no choice but to arrest you for trespassing. She laughed, a sound that echoed with power. You're bluffing, General, and you know it. Come now, let's not keep each other waiting any longer. She turned to Finn, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Well, Private, it seems our little charade is over. Time for you to go. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. But Finn couldn't move. He was torn between his orders and his conscience. On one hand, he had followed orders to the letter, keeping the woman outside the gate. But on the other, he had failed to stop her. Now General Peterson was facing a situation he never anticipated, all because of Finn's indecision. He felt a surge of responsibility, a realization that he was more than just a cog in the machine. He was a person with agency, with choices. His inaction had consequences. Private, General Peterson's voice cut through Finn's thoughts. I need you to run a full security sweep of the perimeter, and I want every man on alert. We don't know who this woman is, but if she's willing to infiltrate our base undetected, she's more than just a troublemaker. She's a threat. His words were a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the dangers they faced every day. Finn snapped into action, his hesitation forgotten. He saluted smartly, yes sir, right away. Sir. With a newfound sense of purpose, he raced to complete his orders. He moved like a phantom through the base, checking every post, questioning every guard, searching for anything out of the ordinary. He found nothing. The base was secure, or at least it seemed that way. Back at the gate, General Peterson was engaged in a tense standoff with the mysterious woman. They were a study in contrasts, the seasoned general facing off against an unknown challenger. The power dynamics were clear, but the outcome was far from certain. Suddenly, a crackle over the radio broke the silence. It was Finn, his voice tight with urgency. General, I've completed the sweep. Nothing out of the ordinary. But ma'am, she's gone. Peterson's eyebrows shot up in surprise. What do you mean she's gone? Where did she go? She disappeared, sir. 1 minute she was there. The next, poof, she was gone. Peterson frowned, his gaze sweeping the area. But the woman was nowhere to be seen. The Humvee was still there, as were the SUVs, but she had vanished. It was as if she had never been there at all. Damn it, Peterson muttered under his breath. This isn't over. I'll find you, whoever you are. He looked back at the empty gate, his eyes narrowed in thought. He had a feeling that this was far from the last they'd seen of her, and he was right. Meanwhile, deep within the base, the woman, also known as Kestrel, slipped through the shadows, a ghost in the night. She was moving with a purpose, her steps silent, her presence undetected. She was a predator in the night, and her prey was unaware of the danger lurking in the darkness. Her mission was underway. Finn had never seen a military installation move so quickly when it came to food. Just hours after he first set foot in the dining hall, rumors were swirling about an upcoming change in command. By dinner, a new general was being welcomed, and by the next day she was on the ground. Now Finn stood at attention, waiting for her arrival, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. He knew, even though he hadn't been told explicitly, that the rumors were true. The woman he had defied wasn't just any officer. She was the new commander of the entire Western Command. And tomorrow she was going to have a meeting with the assembled troops. This meant one thing. Finn had made a massive mistake. He was unsure if it was pride or stupidity that kept him from backing down when he first encountered the woman. He had seen the insignia on her raincoat, but he had dismissed it, thinking it must be a ceremonial uniform. He should have known better. He could have saved himself and probably saved the sergeant a lot of paperwork. As he waited, he tried to imagine what sort of punishment she might have in mind for him, maybe extra duty, maybe a demotion. But as he stood there chewing his lip, watching the path ahead, he heard the familiar sound that sent chills down his spine, boots on gravel. Even from far off, he knew who it was. He straightened to attention. Even though he had no idea what the new general would look like, there was something about her stride, the way she carried herself, that spoke volumes. Finn had seen countless officers walk that path, and he could spot a commander from a mile off. When she was close enough, he finally dared to look. General Volkov was not what Finn expected. She wasn't a man weathered and worn by years of command, his face a roadmap of past battles. Instead, he found himself looking into the sharp, intelligent eyes of a young woman in full dress uniform. Her jaw was set, her gaze direct. Despite the weight of her uniform, she walked with a soldier's bearing, her steps confident and strong. In her hands, she carried a black briefcase, the kind that held important documents and important secrets. As she approached, Finn could make out the insignia on her uniform, the stars, the medals, the braids. It was a visual testament to her career, her dedication and her accomplishments. Finn suddenly felt very small. He was just a private guarding the gate, while she, with her quiet confidence, represented the very core of the army's power. He looked away for a moment, trying to steady himself. He was a soldier, trained to be unflappable, but the sight of the general, so unassuming yet so commanding, had thrown him off balance. He closed his eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and when he opened them, he was ready. He was a soldier who didn't flinch in the face of danger, a soldier who didn't break under pressure. He was a soldier. Then the ground beneath him seemed to shift. If Finn had been thrown off balance before, this was his Waterloo. For General Volkov didn't stop in front of him. She continued walking straight towards the gate, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. She wasn't looking at him. She wasn't acknowledging his presence at all. That was bad. That was really bad. Protocol dictated that she should have halted, looked him in the eye, acknowledged his salute. But she wasn't doing any of those things. She was practically barreling through him. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a major breach of etiquette, possibly even insubordination. In any other circumstances, Finn would have acted immediately, challenged her, demanded an explanation. But something about her resolute stride, her focused gaze held him in place. It was as if the rules themselves were bending in her presence. He felt rooted to the spot, unable to move, unable to speak. All he could do was watch as she approached the gate, her back a tight line of authority, her every step echoing with unspoken commands. The sight of her, so resolute, so sure of herself, filled him with a strange mix of emotions, awe, respect, and a dawning realization of how badly he had misjudged her. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the crunch of her boots on the gravel. Finally, she stopped just before the barrier, turning slightly to face him. She didn't raise a hand to salute. She didn't speak. She just looked at him, her gaze unwavering, waiting. The weight of her stare was intense. It was as if she was seeing right through him, dissecting his every thought, every hesitation. It was unsettling, unnerving, but strangely compelling. The longer he stood there, the more he felt himself drawn into her gaze, the more he understood the gravity of his mistake. She had probably already spoken to someone. Someone had informed her about his failure to open the gate, and instead of punishing him immediately, she was giving him a chance to correct his error, a chance to prove himself. In that moment, Finn made a decision. He straightened his shoulders, squared his jaw, and met her gaze directly. He had failed her once, but he wouldn't fail her again. He wouldn't break protocol, he wouldn't flinch, he would stand his ground and he would wait. He had no idea what was coming next, but he was ready. From the shattered remnants of Fort Sterling, the tale of Finn O'Connell and his legendary resistance reverberated like a battle cry across the ranks of the enforcers. For those who listened closely, the echoes held a profound wisdom, a testament to the power of unwavering adherence to the protocols. While some saw Finn's actions as a foolish rebellion against an unassailable authority, others recognized the brilliance in his strategy. They understood that it was not blind obedience, but intelligent scrutiny of the rules that had led to his triumph. In the hallowed halls of the Citadel, high above the clamor of the lower levels, Commander Eva Belaris reviewed the latest reports with an air of quiet satisfaction. Her gaze, as sharp and penetrating as ever, scanned the documents before her, each word registering clearly in her formidable mind. Beside her, her second-in-command, the taciturn and battle-hardened Sergeant Kato Sato, stood in stoic silence, his presence a study in controlled intensity. The fallout from Fort Sterling continues to be minimal, Eva stated, her voice resonating with quiet authority. Though several lower-level facilities have reported minor uprisings, nothing compares to the scale or impact of the initial incident. Kato grunted in acknowledgement, his dark eyes betraying none of his thoughts. "What of the casualties?" he finally asked, his voice a low rumble. Ava's lips tightened slightly. 2 confirmed fatalities among the officers, several non-lethal injuries, but the true measure is how our forces have handled the situation. She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle in the air between them. We've received multiple reports of other guards displaying similar initiative. It seems O'Connell's actions have inspired others. Cato remained silent, turning the implications over in his mind. Inspiration wasn't always a good thing. Not in a society where order and control were paramount. Are we to view this as a successful test, ma'am? A young officer stepped forward, his tone laced with both admiration and apprehension. The way Guard O'Connell used the protocols to outmaneuver even Commander March himself is the stuff of legends. A flicker of a smile touched the corner of Ava's lips. Indeed, and yet, she continued, her tone turning serious once more. We must remember that his victory came at a cost. Lives were disrupted, protocols were broken, and trust within the ranks was shaken. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the assembled officers. Such actions cannot go unchecked. We need to understand why so many were swayed by his actions. What drove them to momentarily abandon the very order they were sworn to uphold? She looked back at the report in her hands, her mind already formulating strategies. The lessons learned from Fort Sterling were crucial, not just for maintaining order, but for ensuring the very survival of their society. The question was, would those in power be willing to listen? Deep within the labyrinthine underbelly of the Citadel, where the hum of machinery mingled with the murmur of countless workers, lived a man known only as the Tinkerer. His world was a symphony of gears, springs, and polished metal, a testament to a life devoted to understanding the intricate mechanisms that drove the Citadel and, by extension, their entire society. One day, amidst the maze of corridors and workshops, the Tinker caught wind of a story that set his nimble fingers itching for action. It was the tale of Finn O'Connell and his audacious stand at Fort Sterling. In the rhythmic clang of his hammer against steel, the Tinker found a strange kinship with the young guard, recognizing in him a kindred spirit, a fellow devotee of rules and regulations. And so it was that when the report of Finn's actions reached Eva Bellarice's desk, it was accompanied by a small, unassuming package. Within it lay a simple device, its intricate workings hinting at the extraordinary lengths to which the Tinker's art could reach. Upon activating the device, a holographic projection flickered to life, depicting every move made by Finn O'Connell during his confrontation with Commander March. But what truly set this reenactment apart was the addition of a layer of data, not visible to the naked eye. Each decision, each action, each spoken word was cross-referenced with the relevant protocols, making it crystal clear just how meticulously Finn had followed, bent and manipulated the rules to his advantage. As Eva watched the projection, her expression shifted from surprise to grudging admiration and finally to quiet respect. She understood now how Finn had managed to not just stand up to the ruthless Commander March, but to emerge victorious. It wasn't just about following the rules, it was about understanding them, exploiting them, and ultimately bending them to one's will. But it was also a stark reminder of the fragility of their system. If someone as inexperienced as Finn could exploit these very same rules to such devastating effect, then who was to say it couldn't happen again? The answer, Eva knew, lay in understanding, not just the rules themselves, but the spirit in which they were made. With the enigmatic Tinker by her side, Eva delved deep into the heart of the Citadel, seeking out those who held the true power, the ones who shaped the very foundations of their society. Their mission was twofold: to uncover the truth behind the Citadel's rigid protocols, and to find a way to make it stronger, more resilient against those who sought to manipulate it. As Eva and the Tinker navigated the Citadel's inner sanctum, they encountered a diverse array of individuals, each representing a different facet of their complex society. Some were open to their mission, recognizing the need for evolution in a world that was constantly changing. Others, however, were staunchly opposed, clinging to the past and fearing the consequences of progress. Through it all, the Tinker proved invaluable. His intimate knowledge of the Citadel's inner workings and his uncanny ability to anticipate problems, earning him the respect and even admiration of those who had initially been skeptical. But it was the quiet moments, the ones devoid of prying eyes and official duties, that proved the most revealing. In hushed tones over late-night strategizing sessions, Eva and the Tinker uncovered a history far more nuanced than the simplistic narratives they had been presented with in their training. They learned that the Citadel's protocols, while seemingly absolute, were in fact malleable, shaped and reshaped by those who had come before them. The realization was a heady one, filled with both peril and promise. For if the rules were indeed malleable, then the Citadel's stability, its very essence, rested on the decisions made by a select few. And with that understanding came a grave responsibility, the burden of ensuring that the future of their society did not crumble under the weight of blind adherence to outdated traditions. Their journey through the Citadel's underbelly had been fraught with challenges, each one testing their resolve and deepening their mutual respect. But as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, a clearer picture of not just the Citadel, but of Finn's actions emerged. They were not the product of a reckless young guard, but of a keen mind operating at its full potential, one that had analyzed, strategized, and executed with precision. In Finn's actions, they saw a microcosm of their society's evolution, a reflection of its strengths and weaknesses. It was a sobering realization, one that underscored the importance of their mission, but also the personal growth they had undergone in the course of their journey. What began as an investigation into a single incident had transformed into a comprehensive study of their entire way of life. And as they prepared to present their findings to the Citadel's leadership, they knew that the fate of their society, its future direction, balance, and evolution, rested in the decisions that lay ahead. The echo of Finn's defiance still reverberated through the Citadel, serving as a constant reminder of the precarious balance between order and chaos, tradition and progress. The time had come for Eva and the Tinker to make their move, to reshape the future of their society based on the lessons learned from the past. And as they prepared for what lay ahead, they knew that they were not just representatives of the Citadel, but of the evolving spirit of humanity itself.